songs
last
worldwide,
so
and they probably go in
you guys were Colorado like first time. Yeah, that was good.
We have for several years in a row now.
These are.
The last 10 days.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We like the rut.
You bet.
Just a great place to be.
Yeah,
And the
beautiful.
stretch.
Okay.
And the weather's
I'll just
so
give,
awesome.
I'll give the standard. Yep.
Well, good morning. Thank you for coming to the panel on U.S. soy's contribution to resiliency in the world. And I welcome you because I know that everyone in this room shares a commitment that everyone on this stage shares, and that is a commitment to the planet and its people and the future. We are in a time of unusually disruptive shocks in the world. And the commitment and the opportunities that soy has to serve the world and to serve the needs of the world, to make the planet more resilient and to feed more people has never been stronger. We are laser focused on food security for the world, on providing nutritious and healthy protein for the world, be that in the form of plant protein or animal protein. And we pride ourselves on farmer investments to nourish both the soil and the people of the world. So we'd like to talk to you a little bit about that this morning. And we'd like to talk to you a little bit about how the theme, feeding a fragile world, to us means more than feeding people. It means feeding the planet. It means sustainable alternatives and renewable alternatives to all kinds of materials, be those industrial use materials or different types of protein and of nutrition for the world. So with that, I would like to play a short video for you that kind of defines our commitment and goes over some of the things that our panelists are here to talk to you about today. And all of our panelists are members of the soy community. We work together to do the things that I've mentioned previously. So let's go ahead and play the video. think that really defines for you and for us where we are coming from at U.S. Soy right now, how committed we are to solving problems and increasing the resiliency of the world. It is truly a mission that we believe in and that we work on together. So to start off, let me change gears a little bit and do a little speed dating. We're going to have the panelists introduce themselves, and I reminded them that this is a speed dating kind of introduction because we really want to get into the questions and really want to help you understand all the parts of what our commitment for world resiliency and planetary resiliency means. So, Doug, why don't you start us off?
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Doug Winter. I like long walks in the woods, autumn day. Oh, wait, wrong speed dating.
I asked for that.
I currently serve as chairman of the U.S. Soybean Export Council. I'm also a director on the United Soybean Board from Illinois. I farm in southeastern Illinois. I'm a fifth-generation farmer. My great-great-grandfather began farming in 1869. We still farm some of those same areas, same farms. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. I'll turn it to you.
Thanks, Doug. I'm Ed Anderson, and I'm also happy to be here. I'm also a fifth-generation farm kid, but I came of age during the beginning of the farm crisis, and so I took the academic route, and I've had the pleasure of serving agriculture and farmers through research and those types of endeavors for my career. I currently serve as the Senior Director of Research at the Iowa Soybean Association, as well as the Executive Director for the North Central Soybean Research Program, which is a 13-state collaborative across the Midwest, and we include Pennsylvania in that group. So happy to be here.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us right before lunch. Hopefully talking about soy will get you hungry. I'm Gina Perry. I'm the Executive Director of the World Initiative for Soy and Human Health. We're a program of the American Soybean Association. We work to strengthen agricultural value chains in developing and emerging markets. And we do this through the improvement of health, nutrition, and global food security. Given that soy is a complete protein, we see this as a unique solution to the challenges that we're facing around the world. Over to you, Jim.
Great, thanks, Gina. So my name is Jim Sutter. I'm the CEO of the U.S. Soybean Export Council. We're a trade organization that represents the whole soy value chain, all the way from U.S. soy farmers through exporters and all of the various constituents in between. We operate around the world. We collaborate with essentially all of these people who are here. We take countries, once Gina's organization has them ready to become commercial participants in the world, we work with them to talk with them about U.S. soy and the advantages of U.S. soy. We'll get into more of those later perhaps, but this is not really a program about U.S. soy only. But we work on that, and we're there to try, throughout this, try and help them become more efficient at what they do in their countries, whether they're raising chickens, raising fish, raising pigs, really taking the best of technology that's available in the United States and helping to share that technology so it improves their own business while eventually driving up demand for U.S. soy. My personal background, I feel so blessed to have had the opportunity to really work in agriculture all my life, from growing up on a farm in northeastern Colorado, studying agriculture in college, working for a large agricultural organization company for a while, and then being with USEC for the last 10 years or so. So feel very honored to be with this group here today.
Yeah, thank you all. So you can see the trend we've just exhibited here with the farm, research, developing, and developed. So I'm going to go in that order with a few questions. We know that sustainability and planetary resilience begins on the farm. Feeding people begins on the farm. So I'd like to start with Doug, and I'd like to ask you, and now that you're pretty much through harvest, it's quite the interview.
About 60% done, yes.
Well, thanks for being here because it's not the easiest time to get away.
It's all right, my guys are ready to get rid of me.
They're happy.
That's right, yes.
Yes. So when we think about conservation practices that are so critical to feeding the world and maintaining a planet that we can all live on long term, talk a little bit about conservation practices on your farm, and especially with relationship to how you conserve air and soil and water.
Okay, well, thank you, Polly. Good question. There is an old saying that with great power comes great responsibility. For those of you in trivia, in doing a little research on that, I also consequentially found out, I have been hearing that saying for years, thought it had its origins many, many years ago. That was originally used verbatim in a 1964 Spider-Man comic book. So I had no idea that at the age of 8 to 10 years old, I was such a philosophical reader. But I think carrying that a step farther, with great resources also come great responsibility. We have, as American farmers, what we feel is a duty with the blessings and the great resources we've been endowed with and blessed with on our farms. With the soil and water, good productive soils. I think a lot of the conservation practices we use try to stabilize and improve what we have, where we're at, what we're using to produce that food for a growing world. We use a number of different things. Of course, conservation tillage, we use no-till and mulch-till, which we found that helps the no-till and mulch-till particularly leave a cover on the ground, and that conserves water during the growing season with adverse conditions that we've had around the U.S. and around the world. We found out that helps with the water supply in the crop. From an air standpoint, some of the things we've looked at more and more, of course, looking at the CO2 conversion that the plants that we grow every year, the corn and soybeans and the wheat plants, how they convert CO2 and transpire oxygen out, helps with air quality. Above and beyond that, we have began to look at the fuel efficiency of our machinery. In the newer machinery in approximately the last 10 years, we track fuel usage. The machinery that we are operating today, it's not all new, but as machinery has advanced, we're finding that the fuel efficiency, primarily diesel fuel, is about 15 to 20% better than what it was 10 years ago. So that lowers our greenhouse gas emissions, and it contributes to air quality. We're working to try to do things as efficiently. Of course, with no-till, there's a lot less passes, so we're using less fuel, less fossil fuel. And everything that we run runs on a biofuel, either biodiesel or an ethanol blend of gasoline. Water conservation, there are a number of things. We have some ground that is rolling hill ground. We have used terrace systems. Terrace systems are a series of dams that are built down the sides of hills, and they intercept the water at shorter intervals. And then there are pipe outlets. We bury plastic pipe underground, or what we call tile, and that drains those basins sequentially so it can be removed at a non-erosive velocity. So we save a lot of the nutrients, we save the soil, it keeps all of it in place. Using that in conjunction with the no-till program also keeps all of that in place. A lot of the newer technology we're finding helps us in our efficiency a great deal as far as the passes that were required, as far as pesticides that we're using. We use a lot more crop scouting. We've incorporated drone technology and infrared satellite technology into the operation to be able to tell where we need to check, what we need to check for. With the rising cost of inputs, we use a lot more economic threshold determination to find out, well, is there enough of that pest, whatever it is, whether it's a weed or whether it's an insect or whether it's some sort of fungal disease coming in, is there enough there that it's going to harm the yield on that crop enough to come back in and to pay for it, or can we tolerate that and still be better off not using that pesticide? I think Paul's got one more slide, and I'll kind of give a background. And yes, I am an unabashedly proud grandfather. This is my 2-year-old granddaughter, Ada. When people ask me why I do this, in the world there are over 600,000 children that are 5 years or younger. As American farmers, and I don't think I've ever talked to a farmer that doesn't feel the same way, it's our responsibility to do the most efficient job that we can do, but also to produce the most that we can to feed those children in the world. We do this yes, it provides a living for us, but a lot of why we do this is not necessarily for Ada's generation, but for Ada's children and Ada's grandchildren. And to have that continuity and that constant improvement in what we do on our farms, to be able to keep this world in a producible manner and to feed those other 600 million children in the world. Wouldn't you love to be that babysitter? But it's kind of an inherent, I guess, principle with farmers that this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be this efficient. We're supposed to be looking for ways to constantly get better at what we do and provide that food source. I think we need to couple some of that, listening to one of the keynote speakers this morning talking about in underdeveloped countries and in the first that comes, I had the opportunity to be in Nigeria earlier this year, so to be able to witness firsthand smaller agriculture and less developed agriculture than what we have in the U.S. I think it's our responsibility as farmers to help those people, both from the agronomic standpoint and not necessarily what we're doing today, but maybe they're at the point that we need to teach them about some of the basic principles that we incorporated in our farms 30 years ago, and how you bring that up to accelerate their adoption of technology and their increasing of food production to be able to feed these populations. So I think all of these things incorporate together in what we do to conserve and to produce a better food supply.
Well, I've already learned a new word today, and that's erosive velocity. I think I travel at erosive velocity sometimes. It may be a personal problem. And I know when Doug talks about on-farm technologies and all of the ways that farmers can get more efficient and protect the planet, it's really kind of in your wheelhouse. And so I know you're kind of bursting at the seams to tell us a little bit about your thoughts about innovation and technology and how important research is into those areas, not just seed research, not just soil health, although those are very important, but all kinds of innovative technology throughout agriculture and what that allows us to do, what that area allows us to do.
Well, thank you, Polly, and wow, all I can say is, Doug, congratulations on tremendous work and a tremendous presentation. All I have to do now is just kind of fill in what we're doing on the research side to feed all of this. It's farmers like Doug that whether we're talking about research or just the dissemination of research and information and continuous improvement, we try to get great farmers like Doug in front of people to tell that story and to promote the continuous improvement of all of the things that Doug talked about. So appreciate that, and I'll try to follow that tremendous discussion. So, Polly, you're right. My passion is and always has been in the research space, and remember, research is a big word with a big set of background types of research, right? One of the things that I think would fit under the category of market research is we try to listen to farmers like Doug. We try and listen to end users. We try to listen to, as Jim described in his introduction, everybody up and down the value chain to understand where basic and applied research can fit to provide those solutions, provide those innovations that are continuously going to improve what good farmers like Doug and others are doing around the country. So specifically, and Polly mentioned this, the areas of research that we hear the most about as far as opportunities are primarily directed at ensuring our farmers are producing the highest quality, highest yielding, most nutritious soybeans and soybean products in the most sustainable ways. And so we have a very diverse portfolio of research that we either do ourselves as teams or support, help our farmers to support and benefit from at the end of the day. So if you think about research, research can be in genetics, it can be in biotechnology, it can be in engineering, it can be in computational biology, computer science, artificial intelligence, all of the things that can come together to help Doug and his farmer friends and colleagues across the country to be better at sustainable production and sustainable use of their resources. So specifically, we're very much interested in all the technologies, whether they're chemical, biochemical, biological, artificial intelligence, that help farmers to be as precise and prescriptive as they possibly can in their inputs, planting the very best genetics that are going to provide the most high-quality feed for whatever market they're feeding, livestock, aquaculture, pets. On the food side, we're trying to connect the end users and the customers at the end of the value chain with the farmers and the researchers upstream who can provide tweaks biologically, biotechnologically, genetically, through breeding programs to make sure that we're developing and commercializing the highest quality seed. One of the things Polly mentioned is we're very interested in seed, we're very interested in crop protection, we're very interested in climate resiliency. You can call it climate change, you can call it extreme weather, you can call it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, we have a responsibility as researchers to help our farmers to be as resilient as they can be in extreme weather. So we focus a lot on drought tolerance, flood tolerance, extreme weather tolerance in the field for our crops that are being produced. There are both genetic and agronomic ways to increase and enhance and optimize the protein and oil quality of what's being produced on a given section of land. Artificial intelligence and predictive modeling can help us decide where on what land we should use for what purpose, where we should be planting what genetics, where we should be applying what pesticides, how we manage our inputs, how we manage the response to changing environments and different soil conditions and water conditions so that farmers can, again, to use that word resiliency, to be resilient in how they're producing the highest yielding, highest quality crops in the most sustainable ways. Our farmers and our researchers have a shared passion for what the end use will be of the soybeans that are coming off of a given acre of land, where those markets are today, where those markets will be in the future, and how to provide for those needs today and tomorrow. So research spans a big space. We always try and listen to what the needs and opportunities are. We always try and understand where farmers are today, farmers who are leading these areas like Doug, and farmers who have opportunities to learn more and to continuously improve their programs, sometimes in very practical short-term ways, sometimes in very basic and longer-term ways. And so it all fits, and when you get to hear a story like this, you know that that research is paying off. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and so as we translate from the research area into Gina, your work with World Initiative for Soy and Human Health, it's, you know, the fragility of human populations is always something that we're considering in the soy community. And so when you think about the enormous task that WISH has taken on, accessible protein for the world, it's so big it almost, you know, it almost blows your mind. Where do you start on that? How do you make sure that appropriate technologies and the availability of protein worldwide are shared with the world?
It's a great question, Polly. Thank you. And the U.S. soy industry is really unique in the fact that they recognize that there's a need to invest in developing emerging markets. One, for long-term trade opportunities for U.S. soy, but also for helping improve global food security. And in the 28 markets that WISH works in across sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and Asia, there's a lot of global food security challenges in those markets, and you bring in infrastructure challenges, conflict, political changes that can change policy almost overnight. There's a lot of factors that are in play in the work that WISH does, and WISH is unique because we work at the intersection of development and trade. So we're laying that groundwork of capacity building, but we're also helping develop that market sector to be a long-term trade partner, and eventually then allow them to work with USEC to expand their commercial operation and importing more U.S. soy. But like I mentioned, in many of these countries, food security is a challenge. There's also a protein gap, meaning that there's more protein being demanded than is produced locally. So WISH works with those across the value chain, whether it's poultry, aquaculture, food companies, to provide accessible and affordable protein. So like I said, this could be through fish, eggs, chicken, soy isolates and beverages, soy flour. And the way we work with our strategic partners and entrepreneurs is that we come to them and say, what do you need? What technical assistance can we help provide? Whether that's, learning how to maintain their feed mill equipment better, or how to feed their fish high quality diets. And I think this really plays into the research that's happening, in the US. It's also working with our grower leaders like Doug. He mentioned, bringing in technology that maybe US farmers used 30 years ago. And a lot of times we think, this technical training has to be some massive shift in technology, and often it's these little small shifts that make a big difference in these developing and emerging markets. So, we work with aquaculture and poultry producers to improve their feed, so using high-quality soy-based feed. And we also talk about the economics of that. That's a challenge in these markets, access to finance, and then seeing the long-term economic benefit. So through feeding demonstrations, we're able to show them, okay, if you put more up front, you're actually going to, grow the bird or the fish faster, get them to market weight quicker. You're going to spend less on feed overall, and you're going to get a really high-quality protein into their diet. We also work a lot in the human food sector, so institutional feeding is a big sector. We also work with a partner called Adizia. You heard a little bit about them in the video. They make ready-to-use therapeutic foods to treat acute malnutrition. And they use U.S. soy in those formulations. And their product right now, it's being shipped to over 60 countries, and it's just highlighting the importance of, high quality protein along with minerals and vitamins to help, build up populations and make sure that they have adequate nutrition and a solid diet. And a lot of the work that we do is built on partnerships. We can't work in a silo, and I think this panel is a good example of that. We all work together, almost on a daily basis to make sure they're all working towards the same goal. And that goes for the work that WISH does as well. So, if you're out in the audience and you're thinking, okay, our organization is working towards, food security. How can we leverage what the U.S. soy industry is doing? Please come talk to us, because we want to work towards the same goal, and we shouldn't be duplicating efforts. And along that same line, WISH works with a variety of partners, both in the U.S. And in the countries that we work in. So we utilize the land-grant universities in the U.S. as well as the 1890s land-grant universities for their research. They provide technical assistance to our companies and strategic partners. And we also work with our grower leaders. They're our best brand ambassadors in country. And if you've ever seen a farmer from the U.S. and a farmer from Ghana or Cambodia having a conversation, it's really fascinating, because they connect almost instantly, and they have something in common. And it's just, as someone who didn't grow up on a farm, I love seeing that instant connection that's being made. So we appreciate, all the time that they take away from their farm to, work with us, both with WISH and USEC and USB, and having those conversations. And then we also work with partners in country too, so local universities, government, private sector, and public sector, because we know that, once again, we can't do this alone. And Dr. Puri yesterday on one of the main stage sessions said, we really should be investing in market sector development now, because it's going to save us a massive amount of money in humanitarian aid in the future. And I think that was something that really hit home, and I think it really pertains well to the U.S. soy industry.
I agree. I think the fundamental reason that ASA started WISH was because we believe strongly in just that tenet, that market development is, teaching people the technology they need to grow food, and then making sure that they know that there's a resource for food in addition to what they grow in-house, or in country. So I think those tenets are really important when we think about a global economy. And you mentioned partnerships, and I think before we move to Jim, to kind of expand to the rest of the world and our work in the rest of the world, it's important to understand that all the work that we're talking about here today is foundationally funded by U.S. farmers. So U.S. farmers pay a fee into this fund that allows us to do a lot of work in these areas: research and innovation, technology development, all kinds of sustainability research, and encouraging those practices, working in developing countries to help farmers in other countries understand how better to raise soy and understand the benefits of a high quality food and feed for animals and any other protein that's appropriate for that country's development, as well as what Jim's about to talk about next, which is understanding that the world, the more developed world, sometimes makes buying decisions that are based on multiple factors. And we're seeing that sustainability is an increasing factor in developed world decisions on food and feed. And so could you talk a little bit about food security in a sustainable way for kind of the developed world and the role we play in that?
Sure, I would love to. Thanks, Polly. And it's, I just sitting here thinking about the kind of the progression from farms, the research the much research that's done to help farmers, the work that Gina's group does. I just, again, feel so pleased to be a part of all this. And it's, to sustainability and food security or nutrition security, when you talk about those two things, I think it's a little like the chicken and the egg. Which one really comes first? Of course, countries want nutrition security, but in order to do that, it needs to be sustainable. And the word sustainable, admittedly, may be an overused word these days, but it can certainly, to me, it means something that we're able to keep going for a long time. So if you want to have nutrition security, food security, you want to be able to do that in a sustainable way so you can carry it on for many years. I think with regard to the work that USEC does, covering, reaching out to 80 countries around the world, to trying to be able to help them better connect with international markets, trade is a critical component of that that nutrition security and doing it in a sustainable way. And the way that trade can connect them is by having the ability to, we talked in a panel yesterday about various countries and talked about the comparative advantage of one country versus another and how it makes a lot of sense for countries to think about using trade. And so I think that's a driver for nutritional security. And then to also be having a key consideration as people are thinking about that of, is the raw material that I am looking at bringing into my market, is it been sustainably produced? Because the more that people who are importing goods into a country can make sure that they're having a requirement that it be grown in a sustainable way, that will help us to deal with the climate issue that we all hear every day as we turn our news on. You can't go very long without hearing something related to climate. So I think that all of these things, it really is a circle. We have people want nutrition security in their countries. They want to be able to make sure that that's being done in a sustainable way. Trade is a component that they use in order to get those raw materials into their country. And so these things all fit together very well. And I think that the U.S. soy industry, with the investments that farmers have made over the years, have really helped to be able to demonstrate this to people around the world. As Gina talked about, being able to educate the work that WISH does, educating in the basic production practices, being able to make sure those are being done properly. And then if we take that forward and look at more advanced production practices and making sure that those are done as efficiently as possible in places around the world, that we helping these countries, or helping, these companies to be successful, they then can be the drivers of sustainability as they provide this nutritional security in their countries. So I think these two fit very well together, and you really can't have one without the other. If you're going to make this a lasting situation in any country around the world that is a provider of food for their people, it needs to be sustainable, and they need to be able to provide this nutrition security.
Yeah, so feeding the world while maintaining a planet that we all can live on long term.
Correct.
That's kind of what sustainability is all about.
That's what it's all about.
Let's dig into that just a little bit further. And how I want to dig into it is I often hear from folks, well, there are three legs to sustainability: people, planet, profit. Farmers are mostly interested in profit. That's what I hear. But when you think about...
What can I say?
The thing about farming, though, and Doug and Ed, I'm sure you both have have views on this. The thing about farming is profit depends on the other two elements. You can't be profitable without balancing the economics of the situation with the planetary impacts and the people impacts. And so, Doug, why don't you start us off, and then Ed, I think you have some thoughts on this too. When you think about the decisions you make on farm, and I thought the example you gave, the risk-reward pest example, like, is the yield going to be impacted enough to actually take action against this pest? And we use scientific ways of determining how invasive the pest is. So it's a risk-reward thing. What other types of things do you do on farm when you make decisions about the balance between economics, between people, planet, profit? How do you make those decisions?
Well, everything, part of the audience out there, there's a certified public accountant that I'm married to, so analysis is my life. But I think you have to look at all the facets and how they interact with one another on a farming operation, whether it's purchase of equipment, whether it's your marketing plan for profitability. You have to look forward. One of the first and foremost things that I and the people that work for me look at is the quality of the product we're producing, and does that product satisfy our customers' profile needs on what they need, whether it's domestically in the U.S. or whether it's internationally. How does this impact that food supply for people in other countries that are buying our product? And to make sure that is commensurate with the goals that they have and the needs that they have. So I think, in a nutshell, I think you have to analyze all the different aspects of it. We look at everything. Everything is a cause and effect relationship. So you have to look at where do you balance, and that's what we look for all the time, is how do you balance all these things and make sure that everyone's getting the best. How are you producing more with less? From the input standpoint, and but that's kind of where we go with everything. We kind of do deep dive analysis and look at where our balance is. How can we survive in our occupation, but how also can we help feed the world with a nutritious food supply?
Oh. Yeah, Ed, thoughts on this?
Yeah, so to build upon that a little bit, Doug, perhaps. So as I think of this analysis and analytics piece, I couldn't agree more. And I would take a brief look at history, right? So we've had some type of precision agriculture in the United States for about 30 years, give or take. But we've evolved, and we have the capability to accelerate that evolution of analytics and data and the use of data and turning it into useful information for farmers and for everybody else at a staggering pace, right? So to some of the early days, first of all, precision ag has always generated so much data, we don't know what to do with it, right? So we're just now starting to understand. We have the computational capabilities, we have the insights to be able to manage and interpret that data and turn it into useful information for us. But it goes beyond just looking at this economic piece, because farmers, first and foremost, are business people. They have to make a profit. They have to ensure that their operation, their business is going to be successful for them in the short term and for their posterity. We're sensitive to that. We respect that. We try and enable them to be profitable so that they can then consider the other things that will make them be sustainable and produce the types of quality and in protein and other products coming off of their farms that are going to bring value beyond just their own profits. And so think of moving beyond looking at simply what do my inputs cost, what's my price going to be, that's what I need to shoot for. And if I have to modify anything, since I can't modify the price of my products, I have to modify the inputs and that sort of thing. We were at a level where that was about as sophisticated as we could be not that long ago. Now, when you look at, Doug mentioned earlier, fuel efficiency. Fuel efficiency doesn't just happen without research, right? There's a tremendous amount of research that goes into fuel efficiency. Reduced tillage doesn't just happen without the research that goes into ways to manage weeds and other problems and challenges on our farm to allow farmers to make less passes and to do less tillage and all of those types of things. All of these pieces of production and research are interrelated. But if you look just at the data piece, these decision tools, the capabilities for farmers to sit down at their computer, and it's only as, the modeling, the decision tools are only as good as the data going in, right? So we generate all this data from a number of different perspectives of their production operation and create these decision tools that help them to understand what are the inputs I should make, where should I be planting, where should I be applying reduced tillage, where should I be applying water use efficiency and conservation practices so as to be sustainable and to still be profitable and productive in the operation. To me, and you hear words like artificial intelligence and all of these things, to me, it's the integration, it's the coming together of all of those pieces that we're constantly in new development and new technologies and exciting new opportunities for farmers and everybody else in agriculture, including our consumers, but never more than today, in my humble opinion. It's just amazing what's happening in the public and the private sector on all of these fronts to help us to realize some of the things that we only dreamed about just 10, 15, 30 years ago. So I think it's tremendous.
Very exciting time to be in ag, and at the same time, very daunting time, because now that we've learned to use the data we collect, farmers need to be more and more and more savvy about how to analyze and make decisions, make database decisions so they can continue to grow. So let's think about the world a little bit, and let's think about how soy is in a unique position in feeding the world, because we have complete protein and complete plant-based protein, but we also are a very important part of feeding the world animal proteins according to the world's needs. Doug, you made a great point when you say, I need to know what people need, and then I need to fill a basic human need. That's how successful products work. You fill basic human needs and you find out what those needs are. So Gina, when you're thinking about developing countries and you're thinking about the succession that we know happens as people get more disposable income in countries, that they go from one form of protein to another, how do you reconcile that, or how do you think about expanding protein accessibility through all forms of protein that soy contributes to?
Right, that's a great question. And we've done a lot of interesting work in the poultry industry in Ghana, both with the meat and then eggs. So eggs are a really affordable, accessible form of protein, especially in some of these markets. We've done consumer education campaigns as well, because there can be some cultural myths attached to eggs. One of them is, if your son eats an egg, he's going to grow up to be a thief. And so, things that, we wouldn't even think of, but, that we have to address if we want more people to be consuming eggs and be getting that protein. Our project worked with the Ghana School Feeding Program to get eggs incorporated into school meals as well. But I really want to focus on aquaculture. And aquaculture is a really growing sector around the world for a couple of different reasons. The wild-caught selection is getting fewer, and so there's less that can be done in the seas, and so people are moving towards the land. And fish is already a culturally appropriate protein source in many countries around the world. People are already eating fish, so we're helping them find more efficient ways to increase their production. So I really want to talk about three pieces of technology that WISH is working with. Once again, it's nothing huge, but it's making a big difference as far as efficiency and contributing to their climate resiliency as well. So the first is using soy-based feed. It's a high quality, high protein feed. We also work with the pelletized floating feed. And so you saw a little bit in the video from Cambodia. And besides the protein aspect, the floating feed allows for farmers to see what they're feeding. They can see how the fish are reacting, how much they're eating, so that when the fish stop jumping and nibbling, they can lay off the feed. A lot of times they're told, oh, you should feed this many kilograms of feed based on the size of your pond, and so they just dump it in, and not knowing, whether that's all being consumed. And a lot of times, and we saw it in Cambodia back in June, the traditional homemade feed One, it's using fish meal, so that's taking fish away from human consumption. And two, it's basically like a big paste. So they're dumping that into the ponds, and it's polluting the ponds as well. So then, if there's flooding, that polluted water is also reaching out to other places outside the pond. And so, with the soy-based feed, they're really getting the protein aspect of it, they're saving money on feed, and it's just better overall for their operation. The second technology that we're utilizing is we developed an in-pond raceway system specifically for the climate of Cambodia. And it's fabricated by a local organization who is training community members to weld and build these systems, and they go through several iterations to get it to the right specs that they need for the local communities. So they're floating, which means that it can adjust to different or varying levels of rain. So in Cambodia, there's a very dry season and there's a very rainy season. And so these floating cages will go up and down as the water level changes, and they can also be moved to a different pond. So if for some reason that pond gets dried out, they pick it up and they move it over to the next pond. So that it allows them to roll a little bit better with the ever-changing climate in their markets. And the last piece is through our U.S. Department of Agriculture Food for Progress project, our CAS project. We have developed a solar dryer to dry fish. So dried fish is a very popular way to consume fish in this market. And so this solar dryer, it can be run 24 hours a day. You're not using any fuel for it. So you're getting higher food safety as well. You don't have rotting fish or flies in the solar dome. So they're also, contributing to less food waste. And they can dry consistently, give to their suppliers, and just is another way that we can, provide technology that's not too expensive, but give them, something to work towards and to help feed the population.
It's really exciting. I'm sorry, but it
It is. Oh, yeah.
I kind of get shivers when I think about the way that people in other countries are coming along and the way we're helping them get more efficient and feed themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's pretty cool to be a part of that. What I really want to do now, we have about 10 minutes left in the session. I'd really like to see if anyone from the audience has any questions for our panelists based on what you've heard or anything else you might be wondering about. So any audience questions we would welcome at this time. And if we don't have any, I will continue to ask my own questions. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
I work in policy with Laura Bryant with Natural Resources Defense Council, and was just curious what's on folks' mind in terms of upcoming policy opportunities like Farm Bill or other things that you have on your mind. What are your priorities right now?
Yeah, so for this panel, we could talk generally about that, but not specifically about it, because I think what is important to, and you wouldn't know this subtlety that I'm going to talk about right now, but the funding for everything we do on this panel is from, not everything, but the foundational funding is from the Soy Checkoff program. And the Soy Checkoff program is completely apolitical, meaning we don't do any policy work. We only do research, promotion, and marketing work. So while some of us may have personal opinions about policy work, we don't have professional opinions about policy work. We do have...
Well put.
Yes.
Well put.
Exactly.
So once they take off their mics, you can ask them.
Or I would absolutely encourage you to talk to American Soybean Association. They're not represented up here except for with the work, the humanitarian and the other kinds of work, developmental work that we do with WISH, to talk about those, because I know the soy community has opinions about that. We just don't have professional opinions about that on this particular panel. I feel like I've just dodged, and I hate dodging.
We have another question over there, Paula.
Yeah, okay, let's move on.
Yeah, I had a question about some of the practices that were being discussed and then the research that goes along with that. So there's a lot of interest in precision agriculture, we all know that. We're seeing some really advancing things in precision pest management. And I'd be curious to know what's being practiced, what's being adopted, And then how is that scaled up to the U.S., but then you mentioned visiting other countries. So is that type of technology being, promoted there as well? And how is that accepted? And I mean, that's probably a longer question that you want to answer, but the general scaling up of this precision management, how is that going, I guess?
You want to take it first?
Sure. I'll start out on this one. I was sitting here thinking, we were talking about precision management. In 1997, my brother, who's now retired, but I farmed together, we began grid sampling on a small basis, which, for those of you who are not familiar with this, grid sampling, we have with global positioning systems, we have the ability to section our fields off into 2.5 acre or 1 hectare grids. We go through, and there's a soil sampling rig that can pull samples from these. In our particular operation, we pull 5 samples out of each one of these grids. It's blended together. We know exactly what we need in nutrients. We began trying it with lime, which is ag lime you apply to correct the pH in the soil. You're looking for someplace around, for simplicity, 6.5 on a pH. We applied that and found out that in the pilot project that we did at that time, we saved approximately 40% in what our prior lime costs were compared to when we used to do a full broadcast rate of like 3 ton per acre every so many years. We've advanced that in about the last 15 years. We've gone on to nutrient sampling as far as particularly looking at phosphates and potash and some of the micronutrients. We've saved about a reduction of about 25 to 30% in what we're applying in commercial fertilizers by doing this, because we can put what that crop needs, what our yield goal is, and what it needs for buildup and for maintenance of that yield goal on that property. The adoption of this is really hitting at an accelerated rate. We use yield monitors in the combines that we run. It takes a picture every 2 seconds globally where you're at in that field. It also has a sensor that tells you what the moisture and what the yield is in that particular point. We look at the maps. That will make a blended map. You can tell where your problems are in a field. Okay, do I have a drainage problem here? Do I have a nutrient problem here? And that helps you pinpoint what you need to correct to get the most efficient production. I think these technologies, and I'll let Ed take it from here, but I think the adoption rate with these technologies among farmers is actually growing at kind of a geometric pace, because the more they hear about the efficiency, that's like, oh, you're going to have to spend this much money to have that done. Oh, yeah, it's going to cost me $20 an acre to do this. I'm going to save 60. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist. I'm not that great at math. That's why I married the CPA. But even I can figure that one out.
So I also think it's a great question, and I'll try and be succinct, because as you said, it's a big question that we could discuss for a long time. But from a research and technology development standpoint, as I said a while ago, I think that the rate of development of these technologies and the rate of their adoption is accelerating at a breakneck speed, and it's exciting. It kind of depends on whether you want to continue to talk about only precision agriculture or evolve that into a discussion about prescriptive agriculture, right? Because a lot of the tools, and that can be equipment tools, so there are companies, big and small, that are developing equipment that can monitor on the fly what's going on in the field. So I would take that, I guess, back a step and reiterate one of the points that Doug made in his introductory comments about scouting. So if you look at the critical elements of using prescriptive agriculture, the tools, the advances in the tools, the next generation of precision ag tools and technologies, I would say knowing your farm, knowing your situation is critical. And anybody should and can be doing that. Huge farmers to very, very subsistence farmers need to be knowing so he mentioned scouting. There are ways to manually scout, that's historical. There are new technologies that allow us to use artificial intelligence, imaging, remote sensing, all of these things to scout with equipment, with software, with hardware, with on the fly and real time. Know what's out there, know what your options are, know what the cost benefit is, and know what the environmental impact is for anything you do. And again, a lot of these things that are going to cost 20 or 30 bucks an acre, That's going to be for our larger farmers in our more developed countries, and that's not just the U.S., of course, right? But applying those tools and technologies, because much of the software is being developed as open source, so it's free, and it's a tool that anybody anywhere can use. A cell phone and all of the apps that farmers have and others have on cell phones, to me at least, perhaps naively, it's amazing what people in what countries have cell phones, right? So if you have an app, if you have a tool that's essentially free, and you tailor it for your size operation, your economic situation, I would say, to maybe try to answer your question about adoption globally, I think that we will continue to see varying levels of adoption of technologies and tools, but I think we will see adoption worldwide, my opinion.
Thank you. I'd like to direct my question to Gina. You work in Ghana and Cambodia. I'm on the board of Self-Help International. We work in Ghana too because we were asked to go to Ghana by Norman Borlaug, and you don't say no to Norman Borlaug. How did you make your decision to work in those two countries, and what are some of the criteria that you look for when you're looking for partners to work with WISH?
Right, that's a great question. So WISH has been working in Ghana for many years, I would say at least probably 15. Our most recent work was through a USDA Food for Progress project in the country. It's the same funding source that we're using in Cambodia. But like I said, we work in 28 countries around the world, and that's a record number for us, up from 19 a few years ago. And so as far as looking at country criteria, it's based on the opportunity that exists for market development and then long-term U.S. trade. We really like to emphasize the long-term when it comes to WISH's work because it can take a very long time to build up a market sector and get them ready to be a lasting and consistent trade partner. In countries that we work, we have a variety of partners with CAST. If you've ever seen any of their presentations, there's a slide with logos, and there's about 10 different logos on there that we have to have every time because they're our partners, and they range from like Kansas State University, a university in Cambodia. We have partners that work within the U.S. Agency for International Development. So we try and find a wide variety of partners that complement the work that we're doing. So we have expertise that work in feed and human food, but maybe we are, lacking in post-harvest storage. So that's when we will bring in, those partners that have an expertise in that. So we're not trying to say that we know everything about everything. We know what we know, and we find those who know what we don't know. So if you're ever interested, I know, we talked yesterday about potential partnerships in the food sector. We are more than welcome to have those conversations and, talk about where we can find that synergy.
Great. I'm sorry, we're out of time. We could probably take one more. One more? Sure.
I don't know how short a question this is, but taking a big
maybe
swing
not.
here. So much of this meeting is focused on climate change and the impacts on agriculture, and you guys have talked about at the field level and the impacts of making changes and the price cost involved with that. I'm wondering about the research being done and the focus on post-harvest, and I'm pointing right now directly to the Mississippi River and the lower part of the river. Right now, that's costing soybean farmers basically pretty much everybody delivering to the river is losing $1 a bushel just on the change of their basis. That's $50 an acre per average bushel, average production. So what kind of focus and research is being done to look at how climate change is affecting agriculture off the farm in terms of, just even delivery of production?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because when United Soybean Board has a new strategic plan. Infrastructure impacts are one of the key priorities of the new strategic plan. Understanding post-harvest impacts, particularly on infrastructure, as you mentioned, the river. We've done a little work on the river, but it's mostly research into dredging and understanding how we can accommodate the impacts of environment and other impacts on infrastructure. But your point is a good one. When we think about how we're going to get things to market after we do all these wonderful things on the farm, we need to think about how those sustainability and how the climate change impacts are. And I can say that with the new plan, our focus on infrastructure has intensified and understanding that. But understanding the effects of climate change on infrastructure, do you all know about work that's being done on, Ed might know.
So I can make two brief comments, I promise. So from a research perspective, for a number of years, not so much on infrastructure. I'll answer that in a quick second. One of the areas that's been an interest for researchers for quite some time is storage and preservation of seed once it's harvested, right? Which indirectly would help with the issue you're talking about, because if we can store our harvest longer and maintain the quality, prevent insect damage, prevent rotting, prevent those types of issues, then we can still ship a high-quality product when the river comes up and what have you. The other piece I would mention real briefly is probably a bit pie in the sky, but recall there is a part of the soybean family organization that's called the Soybean Transportation Coalition. And the Soybean Transportation Coalition, led by Mike Steenhoek and participants span many states, the United Soybean Board and others. They're constantly looking at things like Polly mentioned with increasing the depth of the Mississippi River, not only to accommodate larger vessels, but also to accommodate shallower levels and that sort of thing. But there's also some, and again, as I said, maybe pie in the sky, some discussion on other ways to transport seed and soybean products, right? And other commodities as well. Large tubes that run along interstate highways or rail systems or improved rail systems. There are many ways, I think, that smart people are trying to come up with alternatives or a multifaceted approach, and it all involves research, right? If you imagine a high-pressure tube that runs from the Midwest to New Orleans, that's not a simple undertaking. But it is something that is being discussed and considered. Improving our rail systems, there's a lot of ways to look at our infrastructure for improving the transportation of products and goods.
Can I add one quick comment on the end of to Chris's question about the Mississippi River problem? I mean, one way we look at this is the U.S. has great infrastructure and we have options. So farmers who are tributary to the Mississippi River who would normally sell there, you talked about their ability to store, and so maybe they're not having to sell at this time when that shipping mechanism is not really working well. I've been reading lately about a lot of sales out of the U.S. taking place off of the Pacific Northwest. So we have that other transportation alternative, and likewise the East Coast. So I think while we do have the problem, we need to think about how we prevent that in the future. The U.S. does have some of these alternatives we can provide to customers and to farmers who can use the storage mechanism to hold until there's a better situation. Sorry.
Well, resiliency depends on diversity of options.
Exactly.
Right? So that's one of the ways we get more resilient, is to get more options.
I have options, right?
I wish we had more time, I really do, because this has been super fun. I hope you know that, I hope you've seen here that the U.S. soy community is really committed to the theme of this conference, and that is fragility in human life, fragility in environment, and planetary fragility at our core. We want to solve these problems and help the world solve these problems. So if we can talk to you afterwards, or you can catch some of us in the hall if there are further questions. Appreciate you being here. Sorry we ran a little over, but I think the questions were good. So thank you so much.